perspective.
I am now recording. I
Okay.
didn't say anything. Oh, I haven't muted. Ethan, can you hear? Thumbs up. Cool.
Okay, quickly, not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. The essays have been graded and the grades posted. A few things to say on it. Remember, first of all, well, let me ask this way. What was the assignment?
Let's see if Adler.
I don't remember his name.
Gallon.
If Adler agreed or disagreed. Okay.
Well, yeah, using his categories and his understanding of them. So Gelonesi writes this essay, is having a loving family unfair? And he talks about various things along with that. And you were to then use Adler's categories like fairness and justice and equality to evaluate his view. So ultimately, it does come down to, well, would Adler agree or disagree with this? Okay. Adler didn't read the essay, obviously. This was written after he died. So you've got that. So to do the essay properly, first of all, you need to use Adler. Okay. If you don't ever get around to talking about Adler, that's going to create problems, right? Also, the purpose of the essay really is to ensure or verify that you understand Adler's categories, and then by being able then to apply them to a specific situation. Okay, so it's not really an essay about what you believe. Now, getting beyond those, what would probably be the major critique Adler would make about Gelonesi's essay? How so, Sage?
Uses justice and fairness into his work.
As synonymous
Yeah.
or identical? Exactly. So Adler in the reading actually says one of the two main errors in contemporary political philosophy or something like that
Talking about justice.
is to identify or equate justice and fairness. Okay, so does Gelonesi think that having loving families creates an injustice in society? What? Yes, okay. Yes, Audrey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why would you say that, Audrey?
Well, he uses the term social injustice.
Okay.
It's a good clue.
Mhm.
So that would make sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. All right, so he used the term social injustice. So he sees some kind of injustice there. Just by that term. What else? And I think some of you pointed this out, or if it wasn't you guys, it was the other, somebody in the other couple in the other class. What else might be a clue that Gelonesi feels that this is an unjust situation? Yeah, he says we got to do something about this, doesn't he? And what are some of the things that he proposes doing?
Get rid of the family.
Get rid of what?
The family.
Does he?
Well,
Yeah, he says. Well, and then he says why it's a bad idea.
Yeah,
But
he says Plato proposed this, and he says that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
So that's not what Gelonesi's
People would
proposing.
object.
Yeah, well, it just doesn't seem right. It's what he actually said. Yeah,
He thinks kids shouldn't be sent to private schools.
okay. So, so is he just going to say, okay, so kids shouldn't go to private schools? Yeah, but what is it really? How does he phrase it?
I'm just
He uses an important word a couple times. It's the word allow. Okay? Or, so should parents be allowed to do this? And no. So notice here, it's not sort of like giving advice. You really shouldn't send your children to a private school because that's going to create inequality in society, unfairness, and an unjust society. Rather, what he's saying is that we need to abolish private schools, frankly. Okay? What else does he say maybe needs to be done? Or some changes. He says he wants to keep the family because remember the family relationships that are good. Yeah, he what? No, he doesn't say eliminate bedtime stories
No.
at all.
He says, well, doesn't he say that bedtime stories shouldn't affect? Wait, it should, I don't think parents reading.
No,
He
bedtime
talks about adoption as one of them.
Wait, does he use the word adoption? No, what he says is having the biological parent, being biologically the parent of a child is not enough to justify ownership of the child. In other words, to say who's responsible for the child. Okay? So I think normally, and sometimes it'd be interesting to talk to you about this, Sage, how that would work, with you being adopted, etc. Okay, but normally the process is, the father and mother biologically are the parents, and they act like the parents. So you have to think again, how would this be done in a society? If he's saying that, biologically being a parent is not enough justification really to make you the one that's controlling the child and rearing the child and providing for the child. How's that going to be carried out?
Like in a Princess of Mars. They're all in a room and then the moms just select the children.
Okay, all right. Princess of Mars. I haven't read the Princess of Mars. Sounds like a tough princess, that gal. I know it's the title of it. Yeah. I've read the Carson, we've talked about the Carson of Venus, but I've never read the Mars ones. So, yeah, notice here, it's got to be somehow the state determines this. All right. And not only that, what other modification to the family?
Does it matter about having two parents?
Two parents, it could be
A council.
4 or 5, maybe not 10. And what else about those
That's
parents?
too far.
Yeah, it gets a little, it's bad enough probably having 2 parents, right, guys? Think what it'd be like with 5 or 6. Also, what about, what do we call it? Sexual orientation. Doesn't matter either, does it? Yeah. So once again, this is a massive, underneath this is a massive intervention by the state. And so like Audrey said, if you're going to move in and change things, it must be because you feel it's unjust. So that's the way you should read this, all right? So because it creates kind of an unequal outcome, because it's unfair, because some have loving families and don't, there is a need for major intervention by the state, really is what it amounts to. So the fundamental error is that he identifies fairness with justice, okay? And the very fact that a certain kind of family brings advantages to some children over others means that there's a major problem that has to be addressed because that's unjust.
Well, no, you can.
Justice is really determined by ultimately by the outcome. That it pretty much has to be relatively equal.
Well, another thing, he says lots of things that are quite radical in this. Says that, quoting Swift, biological origins do tend to form an important part of people's identities, but that is largely a social and cultural construction. States that is fact. There's various views on that sort of thing, especially in the kind of, he minimizes it there. But other things that are interesting, and one of the things that he assumes, or that is assumed by these guys, is that by your parents, say of Jonah and Taryn, Taryn's parents love her and care for her, and they read her bedtime stories. That's going to confer advantage, right? Demonstrated in the data. Jonah's parents just let him stay up all to all hours of the night, do whatever he wants, and they don't read him any bedtime stories. So Taryn turns out has better life outcomes than Jonah, and they're saying that that's unfair. What are they assuming about the nature of parental attention in the world? If by Taryn getting so much, it's unfair that Jonah got so little. This might be guesses in my pocket. But so there's a limited amount of parental attention in the world. It's zero sum, that because Taryn's parents gave her attention and read her stories, that took away from Jonah. Right? And this assumption is throughout this, which is kind of an issue, right? Because what could Taryn's parents have done for Jonah?
Don't.
Kidnapped him and read him bedtime stories, snuck into his room at night, read him bedtime stories.
Talk to his parents.
But ultimately, who's responsible for the rearing of a child?
The parents.
The parents. And it's not zero sum, right? There's no limited pool of parental love out there that we all get, a ration of when we have a child. So that's what part of what reading this sort of stuff you're trying to do is looking behind the argument to see what assumptions are there, right? So he's making assumptions about biology and society. He's also making assumptions about the nature of the family and familial love and attention and care. He's also making assumptions about what the highest good in society is. And he's making assumptions about the proper role of the state in regulating, human affairs and all of these things. And it's radical what he's arguing here. And of course, they make it sound all reasonable and, well, of course, we want all the children to be, gain the advantages of reading bedtime stories. Of course we do. Of course we do. But how far are you willing to go to do that?
So anyway, it does open up a whole lot, well, a whole can of worms in many ways, but a whole vistas about proposals that are made, okay? And one of the major goals we have for you as students is to be able to take the principles you've learned here and then apply them to other situations, okay? And so you have an Adler or Plato, and they will speak to contemporary issues. So if for one, you didn't bring Adler into play at all, or hardly at all, that's missing out on the assignment, because that's how you were to evaluate Gallinesi. Particularly the fairness and justice one is the main part. Some of you came close to hitting it, talking about natural rights and things like that, I think, that you're born with, et cetera, which was nothing wrong with that. But sometimes just fell a little short of that key one there. And it's not enough that they do use these same terms and say, well, therefore Adler agrees with them, because they're really using them in different ways, okay? Anyway, the next essay will be a similar kind of essay, and I think you'll find it enjoyable or irritating, but we don't need to worry about that now. All right?
We find it more entertaining.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at the reading today. So we're looking at book 2 in Plato's Republic, page 39. But what is, let's go back again. What's the key question really that Plato's dealing with throughout the reading? What is justice? That's the first big question. So we always have to keep in mind, so what is justice? And the second question that's very related to that one, does anyone remember what I told you the second question was? Related to justice.
It's better to be just.
Yeah, advantageous to be just. And this is where Socrates on 37 and 38, telling Thrasymachus, you're just wanting to walk off. He said, don't do that. Do you think it is a small matter that you are attempting to determine and not the entire conduct of life that for each of us would make living most worthwhile? And so is it advantageous to be a just person? So that's a major issue. So those are kind of the two big issues. Now, Plato does this ideal city. How'd you guys find reading about the ideal city and something of interest? I'm going to pull us back on something, but I think maybe the something of interest might help some of us wake up a bit. Jonah, I thought I saw that hand going up.
I found the progression in Socrates' ideal city interesting. At first he says the indispensable minimum of a city would consist of 4 or 5 men. Socrates soon states that more men are needed, such as carpenters, smiths, and various craftsmen. He then realizes the importance of imports, meaning traders are also needed. In order for traders to succeed, other men who know about the sea are required. He realizes that the necessity of other men, such as shopkeepers, wage earners, and doctors. I thought it was interesting to see how he progressively determined that more men would be essential to the ideal city.
Okay, very good. It's interesting. So yeah, it does say that right at the beginning, like about what 4 men, maybe 5. What does he leave out here? Yeah, right. And children. You're going to see a big difference when you get to Aristotle. Yeah, he doesn't actually get to mentioning children until page 41. And then, of course, you can bring in the dancing girls later, which I suppose some of those might eventually become mothers, etc. Yeah, but so once again here, it is interesting in that progression. He just keeps talking about these men and their jobs, doesn't he? Yeah.
Mine is kind of similar to
Sure.
John's. I found it interesting that as in Socrates and Glaucon, went on and built their imaginary city, they kept adding things. This city started with only 4 people and grew very rapidly. They kept increasing the population because they would find a hole and fill it with people with specific traits.
Okay.
Quote, then we will have to enlarge the city again, end quote. This is one of the times Socrates says to Glaucon that they need to enlarge the city once again. They kept adding on to the city because there can never be enough and generations will pass.
Okay. So once again, kind of the progression, like you were saying. Sage.
I found it interesting when Socrates said that money was needed in the token for trade. Instead of using the barter system for the ideal city of justice, Socrates says that there needs to be an intermediate medium of money. Another thing I found interesting was the one about the shopkeepers. In well-conducted cities, there are generally those who are weakest in body, those who are useless for any other cause. Kind of sounds like a diss to shopkeepers.
I would say so. That it? Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. And I sometimes wonder, so Napoleon, you guys know who Napoleon was, right? Uh-huh. Actually, he wasn't particularly short.
That's a British propaganda.
Yeah. But about the British or English, he would have said, I think, that a nation of shopkeepers. So, Napoleon was not an ignorant man. But it is at least expresses the same sort of notion that Plato has. Well, that's not much. It's a nation of shopkeepers. They're not good for anything.
Well, they're just middlemen.
Yeah.
That's all they are.
Yeah. And then money. Now, why did you find that interesting?
Well, when he first was talking about the city, he was talking about how everybody has their own trade,
Okay.
and then he said that money was required for it, and I just thought that was interesting, because
Uh-huh.
people talk about money and justice.
Hmm.
Well,
Okay.
I'm like,
Well, you mentioned instead of bartering, right? What's bartering?
it's the direct trade of items without any.
Okay. Yeah. Now, why would, this could be for anybody, why would a city want to switch to why a money economy rather than a bartering economy?
I think it's easier to measure, like, the
Okay.
actual worth of things,
Okay, easier. Well, no,
like, easier to,
the actual
like-
worth of things.
easier to compare things, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. Because the money then would, the cost is somehow assigned, right?
It's like immediate.
Yeah. But I think the money is, it's the ease of exchange is what we get at. And I'm not, you're not exactly wrong, but the actual determining of the cost of something isn't maybe as simple as we think. In the free market system, it's what people will pay for. But, yeah, right.
Figuring out what people will pay.
Yeah. Oh, it's even more simple if the government says it's this much.
Can you see they talk about price controls?
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, because of the inflation going on.
Yeah,
Maybe I ought to.
but why are we inflating? Huh? Huh?
Hmm.
Huh? Read your Mises. Huh?
So, yeah, now what's interesting though is when we get to Locke, I believe it's Locke, he'll talk about money too.
Yeah, I think that's the first place to get a theory of money.
Yeah. But it is interesting because, okay, so one
I agree.
cow
Makes a
will
lot of sense.
be good enough for 3 carts or something, right? But it's not real easy to carry your cows and carts around, bring them to the market and everything,
The cows carry.
Yeah, there you go. So money's a bit easier that way.
2.5
Okay.
goats, how do you give half of it?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and right, it's abstraction,
Yeah.
right? It abstracts whatever the object is. And so you're trading 1 to 1 instead of trying to do stuff like that.
You butchered those.
Well, half a goat is worth like 2 chickens, so then.
Do you have 2 chickens though?
But
You
the
have to trade
chicken
your
can
goat
lay
for
eggs.
But-
6 chickens.
But then Sage is willing
I
to
would
sell
love to find
you,
out.
Sage is willing to sell you half a goat for, 1.5 chickens.
No, offering it's directly down.
Right?
Wha-
Undercutting.
Oh,
undercutting
One chicken
price.
is 6
Yeah.
chicks, so you get for 3 chicks.
You're good. You charge less than Eva to run Eva out of business, then you can jack your prices up, your competition's gone.
All righty. Anybody else want to tell us their thing of interest from this reading? No? Oh, sure.
Yes, I
Jen.
could.
Okay.
I used a quote from the reading. The result
Good.
then is that more things are produced and better and more easily when one man performs one task according to his nature
Okay.
at the right moment and at leisure from other occupations. I understand the idea that everyone is gifted at different things. For example, someone may be better at painting than their friend, so it is better for that person to stick with painting while their friend does what they are better at. However, is Socrates saying that each person can only do one thing at a time? If so, are people unable to have multiple gifts?
Okay, that's a good point too. Yeah, can you have multiple gifts? That's a criticism of the idea, but this quotation is a crucial one, this concept. It's often called one man, one art, okay, or one skill, etc. And that's going to play a major role in all of this. So we'll want to hold on to that one. Very good, okay? Well, let's work back a little bit here. How does have they really determined by this time, before this book 2, have they determined really what justice is?
They haven't really.
They've argued about it.
That was
Yeah.
my other question. Like I was confused, like how it related to the ideal city.
Okay, very good. Yeah. And this is because it's a developing argument.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I feel like he kept bringing it up, but he never actually said how it related to it.
Yep. It will get there, okay? But, and that's where, yeah, you need to kind of wait on these. What really had been determined about justice at the end,
What it's not.
which is what?
The avenging stronger or harming anyone.
Yeah. So it really hasn't been told what it is so much, except probably in some sense that doing good to the other, okay? But yeah, it's definitely not harming another, but that's not really a definition yet, is it? So, so they discuss a methodology here. How are they going to approach the problem here? Why is he discussing a city, which maybe is what you're getting at, Taryn? Okay, why is he discussing? Why do they go to this discussion of a city? He says it at the very beginning.
He said it's easier to talk about justice in a large object and smaller objects.
Yeah, and he actually uses what image? Do you remember?
So that's in her- so justice in the city.
Audrey. Which is easier for you to read?
The big one.
The big one, yeah, all right. See, that's what his argument is, okay? Because the city's bigger than the individual, like letters. Let's start with this, and maybe this will help us out, okay? Now, this is a very, very important and famous discussion here, and it's often called the isomorphic analogy between the city and the individual. And I would even might even say between the individual soul. Okay, that's it. All right. Isomorphic analogy. If you guys any words you know that start off with like isotope. What's an isotope?
Oh, that was a while ago.
How about geometry?
Isosceles.
Isosceles triangle. What's an isosceles triangle, Jake?
Squishy one.
A squishy
No,
one.
sorry, it's like a.
Like a
it's-
taco?
Yeah. Everyone knows it's like a no, so it's like really, they're not gonna explain. It has an acute angle.
Two or two
That's
sides.
two
Very
an
fun.
acute
Has an
angle,
It
not
does
an
have
ugly
a
angle.
I can draw one.
You can-
Yeah, it's
Come on
really-
up then,
really
draw
small.
one, Jake. All right, Jake's gonna draw his one.
Jonah.
Jonah, excuse me, did I say Jacob? I did,
Yeah.
yeah.
Use
It's
the-
still a
use the
J.
black marker.
Use it. No, dirt is the board. I couldn't believe it. I got it finally clean, and for the first time this semester,
Squished one.
Mr. Leach used the black.
No.
All right.
Two equal sides. and one.
Yeah, well, they could be three equal sides,
That's an
At least.
equilateral, which is a kind of isosceles, all right? Or also it has these two angles are equal as well, okay? So basically the isosceles has two sides
Good job.
that are the same, okay? Isomorphic then, morphic, and morph
Like
Change.
transform.
or form, okay? Yeah, to morphology, etc. Metamorphosis, change of shape. So all right. So notice the isomorphic analogy here is that there is this individual or justice in the individual is going to be of the same shape as justice in the city. That making sense? That you understand, you can understand this by looking at this one. Sometimes this is just called the city soul analogy, okay? Now, if this analogy is true, and I'll just say it is for Plato, okay? This is how he thinks. This means that justice in the city is he was also justice in the soul in some way. And a famous saying connected with this becomes statecraft is soulcraft. Okay. What do you think statecraft is soulcraft would mean?
What's crafted in the state is crafted in the soul.
What do you mean by?
The
Okay.
soul of the person is reflected in the state.
Well, they are going to be, I mean, there would be, there's an analogy between these, but like, what is statecraft?
So like the governing structure.
Could be, or the practice of governing,
Yeah.
the art of governing
Yeah.
is also part of soul shaping, crafting, okay? And this is going to result in a big difference between Plato's view of the role of the state or society, I should say. Because once again, we're not just talking, the city is not just the state. It's the whole composition of the city here, the Constitution. These two are going to be related. And if you got all these individuals with messed up souls, all the citizens of the city have messed up souls, there's not going to be a good city, all right? And if this is bad, it's going to influence that. Is that making sense? All right. Now, so they start off and, you know, because they're trying to talk about the origin here, notice, of justice and injustice as well. Okay, if we do this, talking about the city, how is it that the origin of justice and injustice comes about? And Plato says, okay, or Socrates, I should say. Plato writes, Socrates says, that we need then to figure out what the origin of the city is. What is the origin of the city?
Is this when he talks about that people, everyone's not self-sufficient really, like different people need things
Okay.
from other people, so we should all just get together.
Okay, yeah, very much so. On the top right-hand column of 39 there, notice the origin of the city, said I, whose I is Socrates, in my opinion, is to be found in the fact that we do not severally suffice for our own needs, but each of us lacks many things. And so on and so forth. And then about halfway down that column, he says, come then, let us create a city from the beginning in our theory. Its real creator, as it appears, will be our needs. Okay, and this is why you have the different people working together, right? Because not everybody can do all these things. Now, let's look at it this way, and this gets back to Taryn's point. So let's say you're a farmer. Jacob will be the farmer. Jonah could be the cobbler. What's a cobbler, by the way?
A stone layer. It's like they lay stones in the
I thought it was
streets.
a shoe. I thought it was a shoemaker. Am I wrong?
Oh,
Go for it. What?
Shoemaker.
Shoemaker. And actually, it's not quite that. We use it that way sometimes. The shoemaker makes shoes. The cobbler kind of repairs them. Am I right?
Cobbles them together.
Cobbles them together. Yeah. Yeah. And cobblestone as well. That same thing you're talking about. So yeah, you got a cobbler who's working on shoes. So.
Oh, don't.
Yeah, cobblers are nice.
Strawberry rhubarb.
You should bring Pol Phil next time.
Yeah. Mrs.
Cool.
Isley's cobbler. Oh my goodness.
Know what that would be?
That'd be really good.
Oh, that's right. I remember having somebody in our house when she had done a apple and cranberry cobbler.
Is that?
And the mother had to say, after she was practically licking the porcelain covering off, that She probably had enough by now. It was all gone. But I won't say anything about a family that has 3 daughters.
There's Amelia.
Anyway, okay, so let me ask you this, Eva. What's better? You've got Jacob the farmer. So he's got a farm, but he's also got to build his house. He has to have shoes and clothes and cook food. Is it better for him to just do all of that and really spend about a quarter of his time on farming? Or would it be better for him to really dedicate himself to farming and look to other people to do those other parts?
I believe it'd be more efficient for him to dedicate himself to one craft and then shared community.
Okay, very good. That's exactly what Socrates says here. It makes more sense. So is he going to then produce more food than he needs? Yeah, because this is where the exchange comes in. All right. And an important point here, which is the one Karen brought up, is on page 40, the left-hand column. Which is where they're, notice here, it would not by Zeus be at all strange, said I. That'd be nice, right? Classical schools, when people want to do, they should say by Zeus.
He's taking his Lord's name.
Well, for now that you have mentioned it, it occurs to me myself that to begin with, our several natures are not all alike, but different. One man is naturally fitted for one task and another for another. So there's a couple things important here, and one is that the idea is that some people are better fitted for some works than others. And I think most of us can see that, all right? But he's going to tie it in to one man is fitted for one task naturally. And so your question was a good one. Can't you be able to do more? You know, and is there, or is it possible? Well, yeah, I'm good at several things, but maybe the issue might be time, etc. But also the connection with nature, that one's nature, you know, is the reason you're better at a certain art.
And is he only really talking about like practical, vocational kind of tasks? Because like what would Plato or Socrates himself do? Like if he's a philosopher, like would that fit?
Well, does anybody remember what
society?
Socrates' profession was? Calling or whatever.
Day job.
Day job, yeah. Stonemason.
He was a soldier for a little bit.
Yeah, well, and that's an interesting thing too, when he starts talking about specializing with soldiers, the citizens,
Or the soldier.
soldiers, yeah, so that's a different view of citizenship as well. But yeah, but you know, his wife was not real happy with him. Xantippe was not real happy with Socrates. I could just almost see her saying, would you please do some work and quit talking to people in the agora? We can't buy anything because we don't have any money or goods, okay? But yeah, one man, one nature. Now, so somebody tell me about what's Socrates' city initially like? You know, up to page 41 on the right-hand column where Glaucon comes in. Somebody describe Socrates' ideal city. What's it like? What's going on? Small?
We have the farm area, but there's no marketplace yet.
No, okay.
Very practical.
Very practical. What do you mean by practical?
Necessity.
Yeah, it's like only what you need to live and
Yeah.
Yeah.
trying to do it in the most efficient way.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it is very kind of simple, just what you need based on necessities. And you know, so now let's look on 41. He goes, they will build themselves. Let's go up further. We must examine it, not hold back. First of all, then let us consider what will be the manner of life of men thus provided. Everybody with me on that? Looking at it? Yeah, you want to be looking at it.
Well, I don't know.
You know what? 41 right-hand column. And they will build themselves houses and carry on their work in the summer, for the most part, unclad and unshod, and in winter clothed and shod sufficiently. Everybody know what to be shod is? Have shoes on. Yeah, shod, yeah, horse shod. Everyone know, that's shod. And for their nourishment, they will provide meal from their barley and flour from their wheat, and kneading and cooking these they will serve noble cakes and loaves on some arrangement of reeds and clean leaves, and reclined on rustic beds strewn with bryony and myrtle. Anybody know what those things are?
Is it a type of-
It is, yeah. It's kind of something from like the gourd family. So the idea here, you have a rustic bed and it's strewn with, like leaves, plants, etc. Okay. And they will feast with their children. Finally, we got children involved here somehow. Drinking of their wine there to garland and singing hymns to the gods in pleasant fellowship. So there is a religious aspect here. Not begetting offspring beyond their measure. Just enough kids, okay, that they can support, lest they fall into poverty or war. Now notice here, this is an important statement. You have too many children, what happens to you? By too many, I mean not you can't support them all. What happens to you?
You are poor now.
You're poor, and how do you solve your poverty if you got too many children? Well, you could sell them, but he doesn't go that way.
Get rid of
Kill
Well, you can kill.
Make them work.
Yeah,
them. Like out of the house.
well, war.
them.
So let's say
Take other people's resources.
Jacob and Eva are married, and being a good woman, she has 15 children,
Oh my goodness.
because that's her calling. But Jacob can't support 15 children.
I'm
Just
a
support
farmer.
child.
Yeah, but over here you've got Jonah and Taryn. Now they sit down and they economize and say, we can support 2 children. And so all of a sudden they're very wealthy. So what does poor Jacob do? He steals. He makes war on them. Yeah, or dumps the kid off. Talk to Galanessi. You need to take some of my children. But yeah, so it's that kind of a kind of living that's beyond one's means creates conflict, which is here talked about as war. Okay. All righty. So Glaucon says, what's his complaint? What's his complaint?
No relishes.
No relishes for the menu described as feasting. So you guys know what a relish is?
Is that like
Delicacies. Yeah, it's not just not pickle relish or things like that. Not just that.
no relish?
So tell you what, Eva, read the next paragraph where all of a sudden Socrates goes way out on a limb here with all of these delightful relishes. Can you read that true? Mhm.
True, I said. I forgot that they will also have relishes, salt, of course, and olives, and cheese, and onions, and grains, and the sort of things they boil in the country. They will boil up together. But for dessert, we will serve them figs and chickpeas and beans, and they will toast berries and acorns before the fire, washing them down with moderate portions, and so living
Huh?
in
Moderate.
potations. Oh, oops.
You ever heard of something being potable?
I've never seen that. Potation.
Potable?
Implantable.
Drinkable. Yeah, drinkable. Potable or potable water. I'm not sure how you pronounce it actually. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. So.
And so, living in peace and health, they will probably die in old age and hand on a life to their offspring.
Okay, so notice this really lovely feast now. Have you ever thought about having chickpeas and beans for dessert?
Chickpeas are kind of,
For dessert? I don't mind chickpeas.
well, it matters. It matters.
How about toasted acorns? Anybody had toasted acorns?
Actually sounds like it might be okay.
It might be
Let's go
okay. You might have to
toast
fight
it.
with the squirrels. Okay?
Just take squirrel
But,
and squirrel jerky.
So notice here, this is still, I mean, and here's your, now, notice, you said relishes would be like luxuries kind of.
Yeah.
What do you think of a meal that's olives, cheese, onions, and greens, and kind of all boiled together. Does that sound like a luxury item?
A stew of
Besides the olives, I mean, that sounds pretty good to
what?
me.
Olives
You
are
must be
amazing.
hungry. It doesn't sound very
It
luxurious.
sounds like a.
Yeah.
I don't see any meat.
Olives are
wouldn't-
good.
Yeah, it's.
That
it
is a
doesn't seem
problem.
Luxurious,
No
but
Okay.
it doesn't seem like horrible.
They said they have
Okay.
cakes.
Well, you guys have
Yeah,
lower
okay.
taste tonight. Anyway, so
Yeah,
you
yeah.
wash them down with this moderate drinks, okay? Because you're talking wine, you don't want to get bombed. And so what's the result? Living in peace and health. So once again, this is a peaceful city. There's not the conflict because everybody's living within their means and it's healthy.
Yeah.
I don't know why you'd want to live to old age eating those things, but that's a whole other thing. So Audrey, how does Glaucon respond to this luxurious meal? Anybody see this?
If you're founding a city.
Go ahead.
If
Jake.
you were founding a city of pigs, Socrates, what other fodder than this would you provide?
Okay, so yeah, maybe you think this is a nice thing. Some of it sounds it's nice for pigs.
Well, I think we're thinking also like with a lot of seasoning too, and I don't quite know how much seasoning they have, so it might be a little bland.
Yeah, I would say so too. What would you have, Glaucon? What is customary? They must recline on couches, I presume, if they are not to be uncomfortable, because I remember they hate reclining, and dine from tables and have dishes and sweetmeats such as are now in use. All right? Sound better?
Yes.
So what does Socrates, how does Socrates describe Glaucon's city? After the good.
Luxury.
Luxurious. Anything else? Glaucon city?
Origin and justice. No?
Okay, so you've got a luxurious rather than a, pardon?
What'd you say?
Fevered, yeah. Notice here. So good, said I understand. It is not merely the origin of the city, it seems, that we are considering, but the origin of a luxurious city. Perhaps that isn't such a bad suggestion either. For by observation of such a city, now notice a luxurious city, it may be we can discern the origin of justice and injustice in states. The true state, whose state would be the true state? Socrates's or Glaucon's?
Socrates.
Socrates. The true state, I believe, to be one we've described, the healthy state. Notice this is like the third time he's mentioned health, isn't it?
Mhm.
Okay, so the healthy state. But if it is your pleasure that we contemplate also a fevered state, is being fevered good? No, it's not. Yeah, it's delirious, isn't it? Yeah. So, go down to 42 at the bottom. Left-hand column. Karen, could you read the first couple of sentences there? It starts, then we shall have to.
Then we shall have to enlarge the city again, for that healthy state is no longer sufficient, but we must proceed to swell out its bulk and fill it up with a multitude of things that exceed the requirements of necessity and state.
Okay, you can stop there now. So you've got a healthy state, which basically, is dealing with just our necessities. How does he describe this city of Glaucons now? It says we have to, what?
Feverish.
Fevered, but in this actual paragraph. Okay, so it's going to be beyond.
Swell up.
There you go. To swell out its bulk. Does that sound healthy?
Yeah.
No, if you think of a body swelling up, okay, it's a sign of unhealth. So I think we have to realize what's going on here about this luxurious city versus a healthy city. And once again, this is going to be related to the individual ultimately. So now it expands, okay? So what are the things that are added in here?
Doc,
Okay,
Kind of like
before we get
arts.
to, sorry, good, yeah, Eva,
Just kind of the arts.
the
Yeah.
arts,
beauty shop,
beauty shops for whom?
lady.
Yeah, we start getting the women involved here. Anything else for the women? No.
Um,
You do have the arts, you're right, like poets and things, and he's not gonna like the poets, by the way. Manufacturers, huh?
Nurses.
Nurses, but manufacturers of
All kinds of articles, especially those do.
women's adornment, okay? Not the simple clothing. Now it's gotta be a little
Beavers.
fancier.
They
Yeah,
have them all.
beauty shops, women's adornments, and then you got barbers, cooks, chefs. Further of swine herds, okay? This one didn't have the pigs before. And you're gonna need more cattle. So all of these products now have to be developed, and some fairly negative things about women, I would say, in this section, okay? Just to let you know that. Then doctors. Now, you mentioned that, didn't you, Jacob?
Mhm.
Why do you need doctors?
Well, because you need somebody to heal people that are sick or injured.
Okay,
It's
so
just good
why
to
do
the
you
community.
think he didn't think you needed doctors in his simple society?
Because it would be healthy.
It is healthy. This is, so now these luxuries are creating a lack of health, sickness, so you gotta have doctors. Now, what else do you need more of? Okay, what's that mean? Yeah, the territory.
More land,
Why you need more land?
because its population's growing and you have all these businesses and stuff, you're gonna need more.
Okay. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So, you need more land. Where are you gonna get more land?
Military.
Yeah. military.
Yeah, you said steal it, Audrey. What's another possible name for stealing another territory, another's territory? How is that done?
War.
Yeah,
You declare war on them. and-
yeah, you declare war, don't you? Or you just go to war, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so notice here, Socrates is saying, oh, look, we've gotten the origin of war now. Because all of a sudden, to produce all of this, you're gonna need more land, and they're not gonna just say, oh, okay, you can have it. They take it, so you've got war going on. Now, then you get into more specialization, et cetera, et cetera. And once again, here on 43, you've got that same principle that we've mentioned before. If you look on the left-hand column, assigned to each and every one man one occupation for which he was fit and naturally adapted, and which he was to work all his days. You see that? So there you see every person has one occupation. That's what they're fitted to by their nature, and they work it all their days. Is there going to be, so you guys know what social mobility is? What is it?
When you start as someone low in society, you move up to be like a greater salary, a greater reputation, like bigger, I don't know, bigger and better things.
Okay, bigger and better. So do you think Socrates is going to have a lot of social mobility here? No, he's not. You work the job that your nature is fitted to, and that's not going to change.
So it's
Anything
like,
about like government or like how to like who's gonna be
Well, that's good
in
because,
charge?
okay, well, that's what we're getting to. But do notice here, it's not starting with government so much. It's starting about filling necessities, okay? Implicit in here is government, but remember, the republic, the politeia, is not just about government. It's about the overall constitution of social and political relationships, of human relationships, okay? So it's much broader than government, but it is going to have to be included, all right? So everybody's working here very hard. Now, do we need people that are soldiers? Just soldiers? Why?
We said that there are certain, like, aspects of soldier's nature that they need to have. So-
Well, we'll get to that. But why do we need a specific group that are soldiers? Why? Yeah.
Man is only fit for one.
Right. Yeah. And so a farmer, you can't expect a farmer to pick up his stuff and start fighting like a soldier. It's just, we're talking about a kind of specialization here. But what does he call these soldiers? What's the term for soldiers? Guardians. Okay, very good. Now, Audrey, you mentioned about certain aspects of their nature, right? What's the nature of a guardian that sets them apart?
He lists a couple things. He says they have to be like, keen of perception or be able to and quick in pursuit. So I guess they have to find an enemy and pursue him. And has to be brave,
Okay.
strong,
Strong.
high-spirited.
Yeah, okay, very good. That's an important one. High spirit. Yeah, so notice he says physical qualities, like you say, yeah, you got to have a guy who's strong and quick, all those kinds of things if he's going to be a soldier. All right. High spirited. What do you think that means, Jake? High spirited.
Maybe like excited or like wants to fight.
Okay, wants to fight. Okay, what do you mean by that?
That's like a natural desire is to like they just want to go fight somebody.
Okay, all right. Anybody else got an idea? It's sort of like that, but it's a little different. John.
Maybe courageous.
Yeah, I think it's going to be involved with courage. They don't flinch before a challenge like that.
It almost seems a little bit like reckless to me, not like,
Mhm.
but I mean, it says that they have to be fearless in the face of something that seems invincible or unconquerable. So
Okay.
it's almost like bravery, but to an extent that it doesn't make much sense.
Well, okay, so, but you want soldiers that are not afraid, maybe even of giving their lives,
Yeah.
right? I think that's what he's getting at there. Now, what's the problem? What's the central problem with the Guardians?
They could attack friends.
Pardon? Did you have a paragraph you wrote on this? You don't. Well, that sounds like you're bold, be high spirited. Oh, now there's a guardiana or something. Okay, go for it.
Guardianess.
Guardianess, yes, that's true.
Guardians are the people in the state that with the responsibility of protecting the state from enemy attacks. The problem with this is that if they are to be a perfect guardian, they would have to have two natures, both fierce against their enemies and gentle with their friends. Socrates says, but yet if one lacks either of these qualities, a good guardian he never can be. But these requirements resemble impossibilities, and so the result is that a good guardian is impossible. To fix this, Socrates says that guardians must be lovers of wisdom. This way, the guardians will be able to learn who their enemies are and who their friends are and treat them accordingly.
Okay, very good. So a couple of things here. What's a lover of wisdom? What's a name we could give to a lover of wisdom? Audrey, what? Philosopher is literally a lover of wisdom. Okay. So yeah, so lover of wisdom. And what is it, the difference? What do they have to be able to discern?
Between friends and enemies.
Yeah, who does this sound like, kind of? That will treat well the
Oh
friends
shoot, we just.
and really, go against the
Yes,
enemy.
Not just.
No, it's the guy before.
Yeah.
No.
Charles.
Polemarchus.
Polemarchus,
Yes,
yeah, isn't that interesting, isn't it? That we go back to this?
He's a later.
Yeah.
It's cribbing off of, isn't it?
So anyway, so he's got to be able to discern that because, you've got some Mr. Boggs, big guy, strong, he's not afraid, etc. But he's got to learn who he's fighting for and who he's fighting against, right? Because you don't want to have him come into your city here, part of our city, and start beating up on us, his fellow citymen or city women, okay? So he has to learn the difference. And Socrates compares the guardian to what?
The dog.
A dog. How is that? Yeah.
That dogs are aggressive to people they're unsure of.
Mhm.
To those who show kindness to them.
Well, kind of, but it's a little bit
That
different
they
than that.
recognize.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, the dog, the family dog will say friendly to those that they know and not so friendly to those they don't know. Yeah, at least a good guard dog is that way. Yeah. I mean, we had when we moved to Costa Rica, the house we were renting, and of course, you had a lot of property around it, had a beautiful Doberman. Beautiful. I mean, looked like a small horse. Okay. And just, we were concerned, both our boys, fairly young, and these are outside dogs. Okay. How's he going to be? And
As they ought to be. All dogs should be out.
yeah. Anyway, and so we were worried about that. And the owner said, look, he's a good dog, feed him, get to know him, and he's fine. And he was. He was friendly to the family, never any threat at all. And also generally, anybody that comes in with the family or comes in the front door, he was okay with. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
But if somebody tried to hop the fence, there was a problem, wasn't there? Yeah.
He was giving harm to his enemies.
Yes, exactly. So, what's the training Socrates recommends? Because you train a dog, so how do you train the guardians?
Oh, gymnastics and music.
Gymnastics and music,
I
yeah.
thought this part was so weird because he just says it right at the end and then he's just like, yeah, yep.
Yeah. Why would that be?
I mean, one trains you kind of in gentleness, I guess music kind of.
So
And
if you listen to
Yeah.
death metal, thank you. I was trying to think of one, death metal, that's gonna make you gentle.
Oh, yeah.
oh, maybe not.
It
I don't know.
give you an appreciation for.
For
Yeah.
life.
I don't know.
Well, remember the music here for playing it for Socrates would refer to much more than just like learning an instrument,
Like hearing.
right? Music is like the music of the spheres.
Listen up, this is gonna be an important connection.
The music of the spheres, right? With the spheres being the universe, right? The cosmos,
Mhm.
and how those things are ordered.
Yep.
And so music is about the orders of things.
Yeah.
Right? How things relate to each other, what their proper relationships are, and how they ought to be ordered.
Maybe in harmony with
Yeah,
one another.
brought into right relation with each other. And so the person, that you're going to send out to do violence, you would prefer them to do it in the pursuit, ironically, in the pursuit of order and harmony, right? So to either prevent greater chaotic violence or, set things aright when there has been violence done. And so to do that, right, it's kind of like the Secret Service. What's the primary job of the Secret Service?
Protect the president.
Nope. Secret Service was started by Abraham Lincoln to find counterfeiters.
Yeah.
Who like counterfeit American currency, and that is their main job. It's a very small unit, and it's kind of an accident of history that they came to take over or they came to be the security detail.
Lincoln could have used them for that.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. But anyway, the Secret Service, when they're being trained in how to identify counterfeit bills, they're not taught this is what a counterfeit bill is. They are taught this is what a real dollar bill is. So when they encounter a counterfeit, they just know it's a counterfeit because it is unlike all these true things that they have seen.
Yeah.
So you train your guardian in what is true and good and these things in the proper order of things so that when they encounter disorder, they know it's a disorder and they know how to set it right or what it ought to look like. right?
Yeah,
And then gymnasia, right?
Yep.
And gymnastics, what's that for?
Physical exercise.
is it? Sorry,
I mean, I said how to be strong, right? And all the other.
no, gymnastics.
Pump weight.
Okay, very close. Go ahead, what'd you say?
Discipline.
Discipline, yeah, notice here, the gymnast is the one who's trained to control his body to perform these arts. If you look, right now at the skaters in the Olympics, but or if you look at gymnastics in the Olympics in the summer, it's not about, just being powerful and mighty. It's really about self-control. And so the gymnastics is also helping you learn to control yourself. All right. And ultimately wise to defend your friends and fight against the enemy. Okay. So it's got a different purpose. All right. It's not like, okay, get all these crazy boys out there, run them to death so they don't have any energy anymore and don't cause trouble. It's really about ordering of the soul and the body and a wisdom for the philosopher. All right. How we doing? Do we know what justice is yet, Taryn? Not really. We're getting there though.
We learned what it's not.
Shouldn't you started there?
Why?
Because I mean, if you're gonna describe what a just city is, you know what the criteria.
Well, we're reading part of one book out of 10.
Didn't you say like the Catholic thing, they learn what a dollar is so that they can identify what's not a dollar? So shouldn't we learn what justice is so that we can identify what's not justice?
Well, we're getting there, aren't we?
Well, because why are they constructing this analogy?
Yeah.
Because they know what
Yeah, so they're like, well, let's figure out what a good city looks like. And then from that, we can derive a definition of justice. Right. So it's a big thought experiment.
But I am so glad you guys are interested in that question because maybe next class we'll get to it by reading pages 45 to 50. Book 4. So let me just do a little introduction here for this paragraph. It's going to be about the cardinal virtues. What are how many cardinal virtues are there? 4.
Wait, what pages?
Huh?
What were the pages?
What would be the 4 cardinal virtues? Do you remember? Justice,
Fortitude.
prudence, fortitude, temperance. What's another name for prudence? Wisdom, okay, maybe.
Fortitude is bravery.
Bravery, courage, and what was the last one?
Temperance.
Temperance is what?
Patience.
Moderation, self-control, etc. Okay, those are the 4. Anybody know why they're called cardinal virtues? Yeah, it's actually the word's like hinge. It's related to the word hinge. So everything hinges on these 4 cardinal virtues. Okay, just make sure you know those 4 cardinal virtues. Write them down, be looking for them. Paragraph number 1. Define one of the cardinal virtues mentioned and explain its role in the city. So he's going to mention these. He's not going to say, and these are the 4 cardinal virtues, okay? But he will mention those that we've dealt with.
Define it ourselves or according to.
Well, if he gives a definition, use it, but you may need to do your own definition here, okay?
So you said define one cardinal virtues mentioned.
And explain its role in the city. So what's the role going to be of justice? Or what's the role going to be of bravery or temperance or prudence, okay? Does that make sense? Secondly, do you agree with Socrates' understanding of justice in the city? Do you agree with Socrates' understanding of justice in the city? Why and why not? Why or why not, I should say. Okay, so you're going to take one of the cardinal virtues that are mentioned and, explain it and how its role it works in society, in the city. Notice, now, when you think of the cardinal virtues, Jonah, when you think of the cardinal virtues, do you usually think of a group or an individual?
Individual.
Yeah, but notice now, once again, back to this, he's gonna say there are cardinal virtues for the city, but then it's also gonna be the same cardinal virtues for the individual. All right. That makes sense, everybody?
Yes.
So you've got a good 15 minutes to begin working, reading it.